have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home.
That precious freedom.
Lines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep appreciation.
Welcome to another edition of Character Matters. This is Dr. George Simon. I'll be with you for the next hour, and welcome to the program. We'll be opening up the phone lines if you want to join the conversation at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. That's the number to call to join in the conversation about what is, by some measures, the most important issue of our time. At least I believe that it is. And that's been the purpose of my work and my mission for the last, 25 years or so, because I really believe that this country's greatness is predicated on the character of its people. And I believe that, unfortunately, we have been facing a character crisis in our country for the last 30 or 40 years that has caused all sorts of problems in all sectors of our society. And it's even responsible, I believe, for a lot of our financial woes, our economic woes. So it's been my personal mission and my practice as a therapist over the years, and as an author and as a public speaker. It's been my mission to sound the alarm not only about what I consider to be the most pressing issue of our time, but also what I think we need to do to turn the tide. I believe that we'll be great again as a country, and we'll restore the values that made us great, one heart at a time. We'll convert one heart at a time, and we'll once again honor those traditions and those values that helped us build character in our citizens, and we'll build stronger relationships as a result. We'll build stronger companies as a result. We'll build stronger social networks as a result. We'll build better society, and we'll be great once more. So that's my mission. I apologize for my voice. I do have some vocal issues. I have vocal cord dysfunction, and it's really acting up in the allergy season. So I apologize for that in advance. I'll do my best to be as articulate as I can be, and I'll do my best to keep this voice in shape as I sip some tea here as we get into the program. But my apologies for any difficulties in understanding me or any difficulties with my voice during the program. I want to begin again by thanking especially the subscribers to my blog at www.manipulative-people.com. It's been a really robust discussion this week on the blog about many issues, and by and large, the folks that have written in and the folks who have commented on articles on the blog have been unanimous in verbalizing their belief as well, how important the character issues are. Most of the folks that write in or make comments to articles on the blog have had, unfortunately, an experience with some disturbed character, either at work or in their home life. They married someone or got into a relationship with someone who proved to be of really poor character, and it decimated their family, it decimated their relationship, and it decimated their hearts. It caused them to lose faith in the character of people and to lose trust and confidence in the basic decency of humankind. And that's how they sought out the resources. Perhaps they sought out one of my books as a result. I have 3 books that I've written to date. The first book, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, is a bona fide international bestseller. And I suppose that's largely because it doesn't matter where you go these days. There are character problems everywhere, and there is certainly no shortage of manipulative people out there. The second book I wrote is called Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, and it is perhaps my most in-depth treatment of what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, and I say some things in there about what I believe needs to be done with regard to rebuilding our culture and reinstilling in that culture the values and norms that made us great for a period in our history. You know, in American history, we haven't always been great. There have been periods that truly we should be ashamed of. We always had great potential. The framers of our Constitution, they had some very lofty ideals, but we have struggled with character issues right from the beginning. And the framers of the Constitution even knew this. And as I've mentioned many times, John Adams said that the whole experiment was not going to work, and even the Constitution would never be meant for a country where morals and character were not strong. So we haven't always been great, but there have been periods in our history, periods such as Tom Brokaw wrote about it when he termed the Greatest Generation, where we lived out our creed, and we had the character to bring our country to true greatness. And I do believe that the tide is turning, that we are about to embark on a new age where those issues are going to mean something again. I have actually an article in front of me that I wrote for another blog that I write for. I write for a blog that's based in the United Kingdom that's called Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life. And the URL for that website is www.counseling with 2 L's, counselingresource.com. And I wrote an article for that blog a while back in October of last year. And the title of the article was called Score One for the Character Team. And it was about a story that I'd read about that convinced me that indeed the tide is turning. There are other examples, to be sure, but this one really stuck out. It turns out that a football coach in Utah had gotten some information from a school counselor that players on the team had been engaging in some cyberbullying behavior. They had also, several of the players on the team had been routinely showing disrespect to teachers skipping out on their classes, and promoting negative attitudes with respect to their academic studies and the academic environment, and also kind of showing out as football players, showing out that they were somehow entitled and impervious to sanction by the school simply because they were the school's valued team. So this came to his attention, and while not all of the players on the team were involved in these kinds of behaviors, many who weren't involved were turning a blind eye to some of these things, and they weren't doing anything about it. So the coach took an unusual step for the time. Now, back when I was in school, and I played high school sports, by the way, this would not have been an unusual event. I'm not going to tell you exactly how long ago this was, but it was many years ago. I'm 66 years old right now. I graduated high school in 1965, so that gives you a little bit of background. But to make a long story short, this coach decided that his team and their character had suffered a black eye, that the program had suffered a black eye, and not just because members of his team had engaged in this kind of behavior, but also because they had dishonored the purpose of their program. So he suspended the entire team. That's what the coach did. He suspended the entire team. This was an unusual step for a coach to take in our time, I think. He allowed members of the team to earn their way back on the team, but he planned really a character-building ordeal for them. Not only did he suspend them, but they had to do their penance, so to speak. They had to work very, very hard, physically and emotionally, to get back on the team and to prove that they would be of the kind of character that would warrant being a member of this team. They had to make their apologies. Those who were directly involved in, say, sassing teachers and so showing disrespect had to make direct apologies. But those people on the team who were not directly involved in some things, they were not themselves the bullies. They were not themselves showing disrespect. But maybe they turned a blind eye when somebody skipped class. They knew about it. They didn't say anything. They had to make amends as well. And slowly but surely, they had to earn their way back on the team. And they had to prove that they not only could play the game, but that they knew that part of the purpose in playing the game, part of the purpose of the sport, of learning some of the values that the sport had to teach, was to build character. Now, I don't know how many of you can remember this, but I certainly can. I can remember when this is even true in professional sports. I can remember, frankly, when it wasn't all about the money. In fact, the players did not make all that much money. And I can remember when it was an honor to be on a professional team, when it was a sign of one's perseverance and one's character to earn a spot, and that one was glad to be there. So even in professional sports, as well as sports at the high school and college level, these institutions of ours were designed to foster character. They were designed not only to build strong, good athletes and to build winning teams, but to do that in a way that forged a person of honor and character, a person that could be revered, a role model, somebody that could be looked up to by aspiring athletes, by anyone up and coming, young people who could look to their heroes and say, I want to emulate that kind of person. This is I'm afraid, is a time that's largely passed us by, but I think it might be making a comeback. At least if you take a good look at that story that I just shared with you, it seems like some people are getting it. I think the time is coming again. I think we're beginning to realize slowly but surely what's happened to us as a result of the fact that we have become a country of enablers. We have public officials who dishonor the office. I'm thinking in particular of the mayor of the city of Toronto. And these people do not go by the wayside very easily. As a matter of fact, once they have discredited themselves and dishonored themselves and dishonored the office, they refuse to leave. And they also, despite promises to mend their ways, they don't mend their ways either. And so they stay and they set bad examples. So it appears that so long as they're willing to do certain bidding, the bidding of certain interest groups, nobody raises that much of a ruckus. We've grown very desensitized to this character issue. It doesn't seem to matter anymore. But that's what this program is about. That's what my books are about. Character does matter. And it matters in so many ways. It affects us all, especially in relationships. I know more marriages that have ended on the rocks, more families that have broken up, more damage that has been done to children because of poor character in one or both of the spouses. And this is a vicious cycle that feeds on itself, because when that kind of an environment is in the home, then you can be sure that it's going to be a breeding ground for bad character in the children. And if that weren't bad enough, we live in a culture where the dominant values and norms of our culture seem to be entitlement, moral ambiguity, and moral relativity. And in that kind of environment, character cannot prosper. So if you want to join the conversation, once again, the phone number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I'm here to answer your questions. We don't give direct advice, but we do elaborate on the principles that I write about in my book for dealing with manipulative people, for understanding the relationships that you're in, if you happen to be in a relationship with a person of impaired character, especially if you've sought help and you haven't gotten the help that you need or the help that you desired. Many people who come to my blog at www.manipulative-people.com, many people indicate that they spent a lot of time and a lot of effort dragging their partner or their child into therapy, trying to get some help to no avail. And that's because, by and large, the kinds of traditional therapy most therapists were trained in is not really tailor-made for the kinds of problems of our time. So I advocate a new set of principles for restoring not only the character of our time, but a new set of principles for dealing with individuals on a therapeutic level to help build character in them, and for mending the wounds that plague so many relationships. So if you want to enter the conversation and you have an issue you want to talk about, we can talk about that. In addition to the two books that I've written for the general audience, I also have another book that's written specifically for the Christian audience, and that's called The Judas Syndrome. The main theme of the Judas Syndrome by Amigdon Press is that just like Judas betrayed his faith in the person that he had followed and ultimately caused his death, later only to regret it. But just as he betrayed whom he once regarded as a role model and a hero, we betray our faith. If you happen to be a Christian, we betray our faith in the person that we supposedly revere and follow to be the ultimate authority on how to conduct our affairs and how to live our life. We betray our lack of faith when we act in bad character. You can't really believe, especially in the tenets of the faith, and behave in really egregious character. So that's the point of the book. Our faith fails us any number of times. I know mine does. Perhaps one of the reasons why I wrote the book was not a testament to my great faith, but rather a testimony of my failings of faith, and what I've learned to be true, and have gained in the way of wisdom and experience from my practice over the years, seeing that many people can really rebuild their lives, restore a decent character to their lives and to themselves by coming to some faith and by living out that faith. I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that I have written about this week. I posted an article on my blog just this week. It was a kind of a facetious article, a little bit of sarcasm in the article. It was titled, How to Deal with a Narcissist. These days, a lot's been written about narcissism, and just about everybody's an expert. But unfortunately, there's a lot of material out there that still carries with it a huge bias from the traditional psychology paradigms about narcissism and about people's mental health in general. And by the traditional psychology paradigm, I mean that viewpoint of psychology, that psychology model that views everyone under the same brush, that paints with a broad brush and views everyone as some kind of a wounded child who has inner hang-ups, insecurities, fears, is wounded underneath and unconsciously has built a wall of defenses. And therefore, what you see on the outside is not what the real person is like. It's not what the person is really like underneath. So, for example, when you see a person who is all full of themselves, who thinks that they hung the moon, who thinks that they're God's gift, who believes that they're entitled to everything, who believes that they have the right to use and abuse people at their will because they are superior. The traditional model says when you see someone like that underneath what they really are is a frightened and insecure person who never had enough love, who never got the kind of validation that they wanted, and therefore in their hunger and thirst for that, but in their fear that they're not going to get that, they have built this facade. They have unconsciously constructed this false face where they act as though they're all that, but underneath it, they don't really believe that they are. Well, this notion has some truth in some cases, but we no longer live in the age when these kinds of things are, for the most part, true. And so that's the problem. That's the dominant model has been this for so long that people have bought into these notions. And so when I went doing some research on the internet before I posted my article this past week, I did some researching and I found several popular articles on how to deal with a narcissist. And here's one of the pieces of advice given on one of the, this is actually from a WikiHow article. WikiHow gives a lot of tips on how to deal with things and has a lot of contributing authors from various walks of life. And this article had 9 or 10 contributors to it. 5 or so took authorship. And here's one of the tips that one of the folks had about how to deal with a narcissist. And to quote, "Try to have compassion. This might be easier said than done. But remember, in spite of all the supposed self-confidence the narcissist displays, deep down, there is a severe lack of true confidence in them, so that they require the constant approval of others to subdue this deep underlying lack of confidence. Moreover, the narcissist does not have a full life because he or she shuts down a wide range of emotions. In their fear and in their anxiety, they close off their emotions. So they are deprived of a full emotional life. Well, this is true to some degree in some situations. But I gotta tell you, by and large, in today's culture, where there is far more of what I call character disturbance than there is neurosis, sometimes what you see is exactly what you get. Some people who act as if they are all that, and act entitled, and act like they hung the moon, really do believe that. Not only that, many times because they're so enabled, not just by other people, but enabled by life circumstances. Maybe they're fortunate enough to be tremendously successful. Maybe their confidence has gotten them in the door at places, and maybe it's held them strong through thick and thin. And maybe they have a track record of monetary success, even relationship success in the sense of conquest, where they have every reason to believe that they are all that. It's not a compensation for anything. And sometimes what appears to be their lack of concern for other people and their shallow emotions is exactly that. They don't really have the capacity to appreciate others' feelings, others' needs, nor do they care. I have some rhyming phrases that I use at my workshops. One of them is, they're aware, they don't care. They know, maybe perhaps, that some things they do bother you. Maybe they know that you have hurt feelings many times when they deal with you. They're aware, they don't care. And I have, in character disturbance, I outline any number of things that distinguish the disturbed character from what has traditionally been called the neurotic character, the kind of character that all of our modern psychology, all of our traditional, psychology paradigms were designed to understand and treat. All of the theories that most people kind of know by heart, that everybody's dealing with their own wounds and hang-ups, everybody's got some trauma they're trying to overcome, everybody's got their insecurities, their damaged self-esteem that they're compensating for in some way or another through the use of their defense mechanisms. All of these traditional notions have been passed down over time. They stem from the Victorian era, They've been bought lock, stock, and barrel without question, even though every single major tenet of these theories has been proven to be false at some point, and there is absolutely no empirical support for the notions that haven't been proven false. Let me give you some examples. I hear many people who are staunch defenders of the traditional models who are coming at workshops, especially professionals, who are firmly aligned with these traditional points of view. They'll tell me, I have actually seen these things in practice. Well, maybe they have, because there are still, fortunately, a few neurotics left. Most of them are not having the bizarre, serious problems that people did back in Freud's day. But there are still a few of these folks left. So the great majority of folks that we say, quote unquote, need therapy these days are not suffering from the kinds of neuroses that traditional therapy was meant for. The theories that underlie the paradigm that we've been stuck in for so long have been shot down numerous times. Let me just give you one major tenet that the traditional theories used to believe. The same theories that brought you everybody's insecure underneath, and they defend themselves against fears and anxieties, and they're compensating for low self-esteem, et cetera, et cetera. One of the major postulates of this same paradigm was that children who are autistic, who are on the spectrum, either they're fully autistic or have these deficits that we now label under the rubric of Asperger's disorder or some of the other spectrum disorders, that these children came from environments that were lacking in warmth. And Freud, in particular, and his followers, they faulted mothers during the nurturance phase, nursing mothers especially, because everything was trauma-based. You couldn't have, within these classical theories, you couldn't have people misbehaving or showing some kind of psychological maladjustment unless they had been scarred some way in their childhood. And the worse their dysfunction, the worse they must have been scarred, and the earlier they must have been scarred in their childhood development. So naturally, if a person was seriously impaired, like an autistic child, where they could not relate to the world at all, and they were stuck in their own world, certainly some trauma must have caused that, some trauma in their home, and certainly their parents were unloving and unnurturing, and that's why they didn't respond with the typical love and affection, and certainly their mothers must have been very cold, even when they were in the nursing process, and now that's how these children turned out cold. Well, we now know that this theory about how a person comes to be the way they are is just plain hogwash. Cold mothers don't make autistic children. They never did. They never did. The theory was dead wrong. Yet, even though that thought was a basic tenet of traditional paradigms, other aspects of the paradigm are still accepted, lock, stock, and barrel. I'll give you another example, another major tenet of the paradigm. Of course, we have all perhaps had experience, maybe unfortunately, with someone, maybe even in our family, who's been afflicted with the disease of schizophrenia. It's a very serious disease. And of course, if you're going to buy the notion, this was the theory, all behavior that you see, if it's unhealthy psychological behavior, it must have been caused by some trauma. And the more bizarre or the more problematic the behavior, the deeper the trauma must have been, and the earlier the trauma must have been experienced. This was part of the theory. The same theory that brought you these ideas like everybody's wounded underneath, everybody's got hang-ups and insecurities, everybody's an anxious wreck underneath who just wants to be loved, and they've built up all these defenses, and what you see is not what you get. These same people said the schizophrenia was caused by mixed message giving parents. Oh yes, yeah, parents who gave love-hate messages to their children, especially mothers who both wanted the kid but didn't want the kid. And when nursing the child, that ambivalence kind of leaked through. The mom couldn't hide her emotions, and it came through to that kid, even nursing, that mother wanted the child and didn't want the child. And that's what created this schizophrenic person. That's what the disease was caused from. And, back in the day, when these theories were accepted, and there were no such things as the medicines we now have to treat this disease, this brain disease, back in the day, they actually used to try to talk people out of this disease. And they also used to assume that what they needed to look for was these traumatic events, and especially these love-hate relationships in childhood. Now, here's the problem. There are rare circumstances in which there is some truth to some of this stuff. I don't know how many of you saw the movie Sybil. It was based on a book. Unfortunately, there was a lot of fiction introduced into this whole thing. Unfortunately, I think the psychiatrist wanted to make money more than anything else, and in fact, the symptomatology of this poor woman who had multiple personality disorder was overblown and overstated. But I think in these days and times, we would probably recognize this person perhaps as a more borderline personality than a true multiple personality disorder. But that's beside the point. The point is that in this particular person's case, there actually was early childhood trauma, the kind of trauma that would lead anybody to perhaps be a little crazy. And there were, in fact, love-hate messages in childhood coming from this parent. The prime parent involved, in fact, had been the mother, in fact, and the mother herself actually suffered from schizophrenia. So, there's even a debate there, because apparently the disease of schizophrenia tends to run in families. It tends to be a heritable trait. So whether or not actually the trauma that this woman experienced at the hands of her mother was actually the cause of her psychological ill health, or was just a part of the picture and she was kind of destined by her constitution as the daughter of a schizophrenic mother to have some problems of her own, or maybe a combination of both, we'll probably not know. But to make a long story short, the main point I'm trying to make here is that our classical traditional theories, they have some value, but they are not the be-all and end-all, and they are not the solution primarily to today's problems. We do have some folks out there who are, to some degree, struggling with fears, insecurities, and hang-ups, and who are very well defended. Unconsciously, they construct these defenses to protect themselves against their inner wounds, and they literally do not know what they're doing. And traditional therapy is meant for them. They're a minority group. The greater problem today, unfortunately, and the kinds of problems that come all too frequently to the attention of mental health professionals is the problem of character disturbance. These are the people who know full well what they're doing. They are not wounded children overcoming fears and insecurities. They are entitled, spoiled little brats grown up who have not taken their responsibilities seriously, who have not seen any value in respecting any higher powers in their life, have basically proclaimed themselves and their own wants and their own needs supreme, and have not seen fit to make a responsible contribution to their families, to their children, or to their society. And this is the age in which we live. Our traditional therapies were never meant to deal with this kind of thing, but this is what we deal with every day. We have all these programs set up for people who behave sexually irresponsibly. We have all these addiction programs. Someone called in last week. I get emails. I think I get on the order of 24 emails a week from people who have had spouses be in one of these programs. Many times these folks are told that they have to give the quote-unquote addict space and time to quote-unquote recover. This goes on sometimes for a year, 2 years, where the relationship is kind of in limbo, where this person gets treatment. And then, what do you know, 4 months out of treatment, what do you think happens? They relapse. And, of course, they relapse because that's just in the nature of addiction. These models were well intended, and in fact, I actually do believe I'm in the minority of people. There's a growing group of folks in my profession who believe that a lot of this addiction treatment is just hooey. But I'm one of those who believes that it can exist, that a genuine addiction can exist. And in those cases, some of these models of treatment are very appropriate. But for the most part, irresponsible sexual behavior in most people is just part of their poor character development. It's not an addiction. Addiction treatment is not going to help them. And if you look at their lives, that part of their life is just one symptomatic showpiece of their otherwise flawed and impaired character. It's just one aspect of their life that's a mess. And if you look closely, you'll find others, and you'll find other damage done in the relationship. You'll find other problems at work, and you'll find in general a pattern of irresponsibility that reflects the person's character. Now, how do you deal with this? Well, one of the things you don't do is you don't try to use any kinds of traditional methods to deal with this. Change, if it's going to happen, when somebody is appropriately motivated to change, generally when so much has finally gone wrong in their lives, when they see the handwriting on the wall and they see that perhaps their way of doing things is no longer working, and maybe for the first time in their lives they either agree to seek help or they this is rarely done, but they might actually come in on their own. And in these cases, a therapist has to do two things. First, they have to assess how genuine the motivation is. They have to assess whether or not the person's coming in under a fair degree of pressure and how sincerely motivated they are internally to do any meaningful work. And then the second thing is the therapist has to be willing to do two things that most therapists are not willing to do. The therapist has to be willing to call them on their character issues in the moment that those issues show up, and they will show up in the one-on-one relationship of a session. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because there are likely to be some people out there listening who have been down this road before. And if somebody has and they want to call in, by the way, I'd be happy to take the call at 718-717-8296. But perhaps they've been in this situation before. Perhaps they finally convinced their partner or their spouse to come into therapy. And perhaps they felt that it was going nowhere. They've been in therapy for like 3 or 4 months, and nothing positive was happening. Maybe even they felt that the therapist was getting bamboozled. Maybe the spouse is a real charmer. Maybe they know how to make a good impression. Maybe they're skilled in the art of what I call and others call impression management. So they know how to manipulate, they know how to curry favor, they know how to make a good impression, they know how to present a good image, but nonetheless, they don't really change. And perhaps the person who dragged them in felt like it was a waste of time to drag them into therapy because the therapist didn't do what really needs to be done, and that is to confront the behaviors that are symptomatic of bad characters when they appear. And there's a few things that will inevitably show themselves. People with impaired character will inevitably display attitudes and ways of thinking about things that are unhealthy. They will display egocentric thinking. They will display egomaniacal thinking. They will display an attitude of possessiveness, of ownership. They will display an attitude of entitlement. They'll present these thinking errors and attitudes, and the therapist can call them on it at the moment they display them. And the therapist can suggest to them that there's an alternate way to think, that there's an alternate value to hold. Now, this is really anathema to most therapists who are in the vein of, say, a Carl Rogers therapy orientation, where they're supposed to show unconditional positive regard, and they're not supposed to make any value statements, and they're not supposed to make any judgments. They're just supposed to let the person talk, get their feelings out, get to those unspoken and inner conflicts and wounds that they're dealing with, that they're covering up with their symptoms. And so the traditional therapist won't confront these behaviors. And that's why the disturbed character doesn't get any better. So if you've had that experience, I'm here to tell you why you've had that experience. When I'm doing professional training workshops, I say that treating character disturbance is tough enough, because disturbed characters, by their very nature, neither want nor take to therapy very easily, and because their habits are ingrained over a lifetime, and because they've gotten a lot of reinforcement and a lot of enabling for their patterns, these patterns don't break very easily. They certainly don't break overnight. But if you're going to help them change, as tough as the work is, you're not going to do it with traditional methods. So I tell my folks at work, at workshops, that doing therapy with disturbed characters using traditional methods is like a neurosurgeon trying to do brain surgery with dental tools. A dentist's appliances are pretty good for the limited kinds of problems that they deal with. You want to have that extraction tool if you're going to pull a tooth. You need to have those drills and drill bits. If you're going to drill a root canal, you need to have all those implements. But if you're going to do delicate brain surgery, you're not going to be wanting those things. You're going to be wanting some very other different tools. The same is true when it comes to character disturbance. You can't use the tools that were designed to treat the phenomenon we affectionately these days call neurosis. You can't use the tools that were designed to treat that, to treat the phenomenon of our age, character disturbance. And so that's why I wrote the book, Character Disturbance. I explain all that. It's a great resource for folks out there who are dealing with this problem, want to understand it, and want to understand what they would have to secure in the way of help to help make things any better. So I encourage those of you who are in such a situation, if you haven't bought either of my books, In Sheep's Clothing or Character Disturbance, they're available widely. You can order them from your local bookstore. If they don't have it on the shelves, you can get it downloaded in ebook format from any of the major suppliers, iBooks, iTunes, Amazon, Kindle, and of course both books are available in paperback from Amazon.com. Character Disturbance is also available in hardcover from Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, any of the major booksellers for you. Same is true for the Judas Syndrome. You can get that in all formats. You can get the books in audio format. And soon, I hope, you will also be able to get many of my blog articles, not just written for the www.manipulative-people.blog, but also for the www.counselingwith2lsresource.com blog. All those blog articles are going to be compiled into some books that will be available pretty soon. And I'll give that information when it becomes available. You'll also find additional resources on the web, on my YouTube site. If you search for me, Dr. George K. Simon, on YouTube, you will find some videos. You'll also find some videos of some public performances and some television and other media performances of a patriotic song that you heard at the opening of the show and that we'll be closing with. You'll find some videos of that on my YouTube channel. And you'll also find some excerpts from an upcoming series of webinars that I'll be doing, and from a DVD that will soon be produced that will have a compilation of some of my workshops and my webinars. So you'll find that all on YouTube. As I said before, I'm on a mission here. My mission is to acquaint as many people as I can with the real problems that I see plaguing our country. And what we really need to do to get a handle on it. I want to acquaint people with the resources that they really need in the way of mental health and psychology services to get the help that they need to deal with the defining problem of our time. And also, I want to let people know where the resources are. If you're a character who has been irresponsible most of your life, and you're finally arrived at that point where you're trying to get your act together, there are resources for you. That's my mission. That's my books. That's this program. And the reason we're here is because I want to change one heart at a time as much as I can. I think we're getting a call here.
Hello?
Call here?
Pardon me?
Yes?
I'm just wondering, is this Dr. Simon?
Yes, it is.
I'm wondering how to know, or what questions do you ask a therapist if they adhere to kind of what you're talking about?
Excellent question. Ask them what model they operate under, what paradigm. Many therapists will say what the correct answer is. They know that cognitive behavioral therapy is the right answer, but not all therapists who say that correct answer actually do that. So ask them for examples. They should be able to tell you how they confront in the therapy session maladaptive thinking patterns and problematic attitudes when they see them, how they would correct them, what reinforcement that they would give for the disturbed character, changing those habits, changing those ways of thinking, changing those attitudes, and especially changing the behaviors that cause problems. So those are the questions to ask. Ask them firstly what model they operate in, and then ask them basically how they do it, how they would use that model to deal with the impaired character. Did I answer that question for you?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for asking the question.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So that's just one example of what my mission is all about. I think that as we convert one heart at a time, especially as we convert one heart at a time to convince people how crucial this matter is, our freedom literally hangs in the balance. I'm being serious here. Our country is in debt up to its ears and is on the verge not just of economic but of cultural collapse because we have let this problem get way out of hand. We need to do a better job of not only revering character, but also of instilling it in our young people and getting back to the values and the traditions that foster character development, because our society and the freedoms we cherish depends upon that. So I'm going to keep blowing that trumpet probably until I'm gone. Long after I've ceased being able to write, maybe long after my voice is given out, maybe long after I've been able to do this program, I'm going to keep doing it till I can't do it anymore, because I believe it's the defining issue of our time, and because I believe that this country represents the last best hope of freedom on earth, and if we don't do something to protect our freedoms, we're in danger of losing them. So this is my mission. I ask you to join me, and I ask you to join me again next week for another edition of Character Matters.